Excuse the intrusion. We're the CRM Players. I'm Brent Leary.
Um, uh, uh, Come to me. Give me a minute. Give me a minute.
You're a savage, apparently.
That's right. I'm Savage. That's right. I'm Aaron Boone. Oh, not that was him. Okay, I'm Paul Greenberg.
All right. I completely went out of order because usually I do the name thing and then do that. But I just felt like, change it up a little bit because it's
Man,
the 5,001 consecutive Friday we've been doing this. So
yeah,
I
I
thought
know.
I'd just spruce it up.
It's not bad if you think about it. Because let's see, that's 100 years.
Yeah.
For
I've been letting the.
years. This is the first Friday of the hundred. Wait, there's 52
Huh.
weeks in a year. So it's 99 years. So we're heading to 100 years.
I look pretty good for that. It's
Yeah,
a little gray in the beard, but that's all right.
not bad at all. It's great, frankly.
But as with every other time we do a show, I've got a new Ram shirt. This is like this is a little spin off. First in, last out. And
That,
it has little Rams logo.
that's pretty much reflects your Ram fandom. You are the first in and
And
last.
I will be the last out. Yes.
Of course, the Rams don't understand that.
Oh, no, but Fanatics does
Yeah,
because
they
I
do.
buy a lot of stuff from them.
I think Max basically is saying you're the great. They're probably saying you have met the standard for their name, their actual company name.
Yeah, it should be now called the Brent Leary Fanatics.
Well, no, or annually, they should just give out an award to the customer who spends the most on site, and it should just be called the Leary Award. That's all.
Yeah. The Leary Lifetime Achievement Award
That's right.
for spending way too much damn money on Rams gear.
That's why we're analysts.
But that's why I should actually have Eric Dickerson on with us because if the Rams knew just how much that would mean to me,
Well, it
that'd
sounds.
be great.
I'll tell you, what's down. We even have friends, acquaintances, I should say, not friends, but who work at the Rams, and they still can't get the idea across to the Rams.
Because I don't know, we'll go down a rabbit hole pretty quickly if I keep this up. But so anyway, lots to talk about because let's see, 2 weeks ago, I don't think really any of the professional sports leagues had really gotten back into work.
No,
But now I think, well, hockey is, basketball just started last night,
and baseball,
baseball started last week. So
MLS,
three out of
MLS.
yeah, MLS.
Yeah.
So all but really the biggest of them all, college football. No, well that too, but and the NFL.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that haven't started. So we thought it might be kind of interesting. And anybody out there who wants to talk about this and has some comments, we thought we'd really just take a look at how each of these leagues have done it, and maybe even kind of compare and contrast what they've done, and maybe answer the big question of are they doing it right? And I have already a big answer for baseball because we just found out.
I think we're both on the same page on baseball.
Baseball is, I think they were in trouble. It starts with T, and that's
The capital T,
it rhymes with P, and
it stands for pool.
yeah, we're not going pool. I was trying to. Well, trouble does rhyme with bubble, and I think that's probably the biggest problem that baseball has is they don't have a bubble, and it's going to start getting real because with the Cardinals, first of all, we got to go back to like the very first week. Well, we could actually go back to the very first night of baseball where the weather wasn't even cooperating with them.
I remember. I very much remember that one.
I think it actually, I hate to do this to the guy, but I think it really kind of goes back to Dr. Fauci and that first pitch he threw out. That might have been an omen of things to come here. But
I think he even was like, I don't know if you caught his face when he did that afterwards. He was so embarrassed at that pitch because he apparently is a huge fan
of the Nets, the Nets
fan, right? But he's a huge, like big time. And he was like, if that you don't want that to be remembered as your moment. Although I don't know if you saw this. to that. So Topps, I think it was, issued a Dr. Fauci baseball card, and it was literally the fastest selling baseball card in the history of Topps. It sold 51,000 cards, where the second biggest, I forget who it was 19,000.
Well, I know who it wasn't. It wasn't the current resident of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue who was second.
No, I actually think this one was. Oh, you mean the one who apparently decided he was throwing out a pitch at Yankee Stadium without telling the Yankees?
Yeah, the Yankees seemed a bit caught off guard on that one too. But so baseball has had a rough start, and then of course after the kind of rough first pitch, they got rain delayed, and then they had to shorten the game. What is it? A 6-inning Yankees win?
Yeah, the first game. Yep.
So it was just a terrible. I hate to say it, but it was just a terrible beginning, and it didn't get any better. It actually got worse because right out of the gate, and I hate to say there's a Yankee connection to this too, but there is. So the Marlins. I mean, it's like I think 8 players originally tested positive, and now I think it's up to like 15 or 17.
19,
Oh, it's 19.
19 players and 5 staff members.
Did Jeter? He's safe, right?
I'm worried about that actually. Well, I mean, that was amazing. So they cancel. So the Marlins played the Phillies. The Yankees went to Philadelphia to play. They canceled the series, right, because of the difficulties. And the Yankees then they had to swap out the schedules so that the Yankees could play somebody, and they ended up playing the Orioles, which was fortuitous because it's the Orioles, and we've beaten them 18 straight now. So that was a 2-game series, right? We took those 2. But then the Cardinals, what was it, 5 people?
Yeah, so just today, like this morning, oops, let me add this. So, I mean, first we were thinking maybe the Marlins was an isolated incident. Maybe it's just a bunch of folks on the team that are going to catch it, and it won't go any further. And then this morning, and I forgot to say, and the Marlins, how many? They're like, they aren't playing for like a week or something like that.
Right.
So already out of the gate, we got a significant amount of the team got it. They had to cancel games. That was bad, but at least they were hoping that it was just going to be one team, the Marlins. And then this morning hit, and I think now it's like 4 Cardinals tested positive.
Yep.
And this is just the first day. So just like the first day of the announcement of the Marlins, it started out with like 8, now it's up to 19. Who knows what's going to end up being with the Cardinals? It's starting at 4. Who knows what's going to happen here? And they already had to cancel games. So the Major League Baseball is in trouble already.
And the sad part of all of this is, if you actually looked at the attendance number, I mean, the viewing numbers for the Yankees Nationals game, they were the biggest in years. There was 4 million people who watched that game. They were I think they were the second biggest was 2.5 million or something. Last year it was like 2 million or something like that. But I mean, it was huge numbers. People miss baseball, right? Regardless of, the overall decline of it all, the overall decline, it still turns out more, partly because of the density of schedule, but it still turns out more fans than any other sport ultimately, because, teams like the Yankees are turning out 3-4 million people to a ballpark over a season. And, but they handled so many things wrong on this thing. I mean, remember there was also the battle between the union and the commissioner's office and the owners, and then now you're looking at kind of the engagement level of baseball, and it's terrible. It's either empty seats or paper cutouts. Now, it does work with radio. Baseball works really well right now with radio, and the ambient crowd noise actually works extremely well with that, because that's all you've ever seen and heard anyway. And you don't lose much. Like, I watched all the Yankee games, had rain issues last night too, delay. but it came back on and finished up. Um, I've had and I've had no problem with no fans being there. Really, it hasn't bothered me a bit.
Hmm.
I've enjoyed watching the team, but there's this feeling that they're not doing enough to really bring the fans in. And some of the teams, I guess, are, but they're super conservative, gun shy. They change rules mostly. Like they had the rules you don't want to see. Like they had a guy at second base to start the 10th inning, to run, or this new one about double headers. I don't have a clue what reducing them by 2 innings apiece does for the game in the slightest.
It just doesn't make any sense. I'll take it a little bit further. Right, I literally looked at this as an opportunity for the sports leagues that have lost a lot of fan interest, and that means baseball and it means hockey. I really looked at this as an opportunity for both of those to really try to get some juice back, try to get some people, get some fans in the seats. And I don't I just feel like they should have been out there experimenting, doing a lot more than what I saw on opening night. And now I think you're right. If you're listening to it on radio, I think you're right. It's almost like there's no difference.
Right.
But most people are not just listening to. I mean, first of all, who has a radio? Most people are watching things on devices and not just listening unless it's a good unreleased Prince song or something like that. But most people are like watching. I mean, the experiences are coming at multi senses, and so when I watched the baseball outside of Dr. Fauci's pitch, when I was watching baseball, I just thought it was really cheesy seeing the cutout, cardboard images of people instead of doing something that could have been a little bit more innovative. And then I watched last night at basketball, and quite honestly, they did a way better job. I mean, first of all, I was kind of skeptical if they're going to be able to pull off piped in crowd noise, if it was going to sound cheesy or it kind of sounded like any other game for the most part. And they did the social distancing with the players on the side, and they even had like a little section for since they're in a bubble, so to speak, other players from other teams were there watching the game, and they were like, it was kind of interesting seeing them watch the other. It was almost like how you watch the Final Four, and you see the teams that are going to play after the current game. You see them kind of watching and things like this. I thought that was kind of interesting, but I think the thing that was really I thought they did right, and I thought that Major League Baseball kind of swung and missed on was they didn't do the cardboard cutout. They actually had like virtual, real looking fans that looked like they were, in seats of their own. And there you could, it wasn't a person in the seat. It's like a screen in the seat, and you can see individual people in these individual seats, and they looked like real people. They were moving around. I couldn't tell if they were just programmed to move around and clap and all that, or if they were actually people like on Zoom calls or something, and they were showing these people in a Zoom cube, so to speak, but they were moving, they were animated. It looked like they were lively, and it was so much better than the dead cardboard images. And I started thinking that's kind of like almost sort of like the tale of both of these leagues: stale cardboard images versus virtual, lively looking fans. And that's why I was like, man, baseball just can't get out of its own way to try to get more people excited about the games.
Well, I think like with the NBA, I think that's Microsoft did that with them. I remember that was the announcement earlier this week. Hopefully we'll get Frank Mason, maybe someone from the NBA possibly on the show at some point soon to talk about that. Frank runs their sports vertical at Microsoft. And but the thing that was interesting to me, I was watching the Pelicans game for a while. Mostly I was watching, because I'm not a Pelicans fan particularly and really didn't care about that game. but I was watching it for the virtual stuff, right? And basically, the only thing that would look any different than a normal game was it looked like they were actually behind hockey glass, right? It was like
Right.
it was kind of like they were behind hockey glass, and which was fine. I mean, it's like you think. Now, on the other hand, one of the funnier things on the baseball side was watching some of the things that happened that were sort of normal baseball activities when you had to follow protocols, like the umpire manager fight with social distancing in place.
Yeah.
It's like you're kicking the dirt from 6 feet away and you're not reaching the umpire. And I was the Nationals manager. I think it was Dave, what's his name? Dave Roberts.
Oh, right.
Right. He had his mask on when he was yelling. Right. And then at some point, I guess he got frustrated because he pulled his mask off, which he's not supposed to do. Right. But the manager, the umpire kept his mask on the whole time. And I was just waiting for him to like throw the guy out just to see what that would look like. Because you couldn't.
Yeah.
I found
him up.
And then there was another game, and I can't remember who the two teams were. It was maybe the White Sox and somebody where the benches cleared. But it was funny because you could see the players.
That was the Dodgers-Astros game where the guy was throwing at him. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Kelly, which was another story. I mean, as much as I'm not a big fan of Joe Kelly, I have to tell you, he didn't deserve that suspension when they didn't suspend a damn.
What, 8 games or something?
Yeah, that's like 12% of the season, right? 13% of the season, right?
He didn't even get a chance to hit anybody.
No, he didn't hit anybody. I mean, it was ridiculous, and it just shows you how out of whack everything is right now. But in the meantime, when you watch the bench clearing, it was really funny because the players wanted to like do usually they're pretty.
They just
mingle around, but this they didn't know if they could mingle around, so they're like standing away and they're trying to figure out how to like jump in, but they can't, and it was hysterical watching like, uncertain bench clearing, right? So I just thought it was a riot. So those things are actually funny. Now the Orioles tried to do a couple of things, but it didn't really work either. And the Orioles always had things like hot dog races and stuff there, with like kind of like with the who's the one that does the president's race? Nationals.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
They do a hot dog race, and so they did a hot dog race, but it was broadcast on a screen. And honestly, that would have been fine actually, but the winner was a hot dog with ketchup, which is an abomination entirely. Right. So that was a complete fail. And clearly people who never know how to eat hot dogs, they don't know how to eat hot dogs at all. Right. So who has hot dogs with ketchup except Midwesterners occasionally? Right. So when I was in Chicago, they would eat hot dogs with ketchup. Right. When I was in New York, of course, you do it properly with mustard. That's what a hot dog is supposed to have on it. And if you really want to go all the way, sauerkraut and relish.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I eat hot dogs plain, which is
and that's fine too. Hot dogs plain, hot dogs with mustard. But I've seen ketchup and mayonnaise, which is even worse. West Coasters mayonnaise.
That's ridiculous.
Well, of course. West Coasters have Brookies, East Coast Cronuts, right? So, but that's what I'm saying. So then they brought in the fans. They actually had like Zoom fans. But the regular announcers weren't broadcasting. So I went online to find out why not, because I like their regular announcers, Jim Palmer and Gary Thorne and those other guys, and because they were considered at risk. So they allowed Palmer to do some like occasional, like commentary where he'd come on and talk, which he did yesterday. But they won't even allow Gary Thorne to do any broadcasting at all. I don't know why. I don't know why he can't do it from home, because that's where a lot of these guys are doing it anyway. But the broadcasters there were not the regulars, so they didn't really know how to handle a live crowd. They were saying, "Come on, make some noise." It was like that, right? And they were showing a live crowd. The live crowds of Orioles fans, who are probably the nicest fans in baseball, are just sitting there and kind of looking like, what are we supposed to do? Right. They didn't know. There was nothing. There was no real interaction there. I mean, it was an attempt, to their credit. At least they tried. But
was he yelling at the cardboard people to make some noise? Or
no, see, that's the thing. The Orioles don't have cardboard people. They just have empty seats that say Delta. They all say Delta.
Yeah, that was just brutal. I just don't think baseball. I just think they've handled this kind of wrong from the very beginning.
Yeah, I'm with you. Of the
They should have had a bubble, and they should have had, a couple of designated places where they're going to play. I mean, all right, contrast opening day for baseball to last night with basketball. Two great games, although they were both close. The second game, of course, was the one everybody wanted to watch: the Clippers and Lakers.
right.
You had LeBron and
Those-
Kawhi, and so they had the marquee teams. Went down to like the last second. Great game. Um, Great kind of aesthetics that they put together. They had some interesting new camera angles. Um, you can't knock being able to finally see Chuck and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie together doing their pregame and postgame. To me, they're the best in the business when it comes to that stuff.
Yep.
And the NBA did well so far, because I'll be honest, I really haven't paid much attention to the NHL. I probably paid even less attention to MLS, so I can't say exactly what's going on there, with the exception of I haven't heard anything, which is it could be good because there's no coronavirus breakout, but it's not great because you haven't heard anything, which is kind of a shame. But for last night, at least, the NBA their rollout was way better than Major League Baseball.
Well, I think when it comes to hockey, to NHL, what we heard from Jonathan, which is I'll call it pre end of season,
Right.
Was fantastic. And I have to say, probably the most innovative thing we've heard in any sport to date.
Right. That's the team level.
Right. And well, apparently the NHL itself is adopting pieces of that, which is good. Well, the other thing with hockey, though, is hockey really hasn't started yet. It starts August 1st. So,
So it starts tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow is the date where the playoffs start, as far as I remember. And so we'll probably hear a lot more and maybe better judge them based on that. I'm going to watch some of that again to see how they handle that. Because, I mean, look, I'm going to keep watching the Yankees. Of course I am. I love in front of a TV set and watching the Yankees. And
I just hope they have teams to play.
Well,
because
interesting thing is, this one's going to be interesting. This is their quote home opener, right? And it's against the Red Sox.
Wow, starting off already with
right.
That.
So that's tonight, right? So we'll see how that goes. It's in New York, which overall has the virus under control. Which much to Andrew Cuomo.
And doesn't Boston has done a good job kind of maintaining things?
From what I've understood, okay job, right? But still a little bit rough up there, but not
like down where I am.
Not where you are, or Florida. California seems to be coming down a bit now, but no, nothing like that. But I do think the thing is that Boston, the team's not the same team without Mookie Betts, so we'll see what happens there. But
what a shame.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I was watching him too. I wanted to see how he played. The thing that's fascinating to me, because I do love baseball and will always love baseball, is that I'm still watching it and still get pissed off when the Yankees, when Loaizaga last night was pitching in relief of Cole was the night before, in relief of Happ, who was terrible. He kind of picked up where he left off last year. So Loaizaga came in, he pitched 2 really good innings. Yankees are winning. Yankees scored 5 runs in the first. By the second inning, it's 5-4 already because the Happ blowing all kinds of opportunity. And then they both kind of hold the line for a while. Loaizaga comes in the 5th, I think, or maybe 6th, and pitches 2 pretty good innings. And then in the bottom of the 8th, gives up a 2-run homer, and the Yankees are losing, which is Loaizaga's signature. He looks great until he gives up a game-leading home run. He does it all the time, right? Again, the kid is a really good stuff, but he's got a lot to learn yet still. So anyway, 6-5 going into the ninth inning. In the ninth inning, Aaron Judge hits a 3-run homer, and the Yankees win 8-6. Right. So the Yankees do what they always do, Baltimore, and now they've won 18 straight. And when Hap was pitching as poorly as he was, I was yelling at the screen, the TV. And when Loizaga did that, I was furious and I'm going to give up, but I didn't. I'm done. I'm going to bed. Blah blah blah. Because it had been arranged. It was like 11:30 already, and so I'm going to bed. I'm sick of this. But I watched the rest of the game, of course. But I didn't find my behavior had changed one iota from normally. Right. I still was mad at this TV set. Right. So, well, but it's interesting. I don't care about the crowds being there as long. I do actually care about. Then the Orioles were trying to like play with the crowd sounds too. So you have the ambient background. Then if an Oriole did something good, they'd escalate and you hear woo, woo, woo. But the problem is there's a delay between the person doing it. See, if you look at somebody hits a home run, let's say on an Oriole side or on the home team side. The crowd is already sensing it, and they're starting to cheer the minute that thing leaves the bat. Here, they have to wait till it's done, and then hit a button, and then escalate the sound. And there's a delay, so it does not work. Just leave the friggin' ambient crowd sound alone and leave it there because it is helpful. But don't try to do things that just take away from the tiny bit of ambiance you've managed to maintain and recreate. Right. And it just kept doing that. It would be, bam, that's gone.
That's not helpful, man. That's terrible.
Oh, it was, again, the usual. What can I tell you? Right. So,
yeah. I will say this, though, and I can say this really across the leagues, because baseball did it too. A lot of baseball teams, they at the beginning, they took a knee. They recognized the social unrest, the protests that were going on, and that was Major League Baseball, NBA.
See, it'd be interesting given that hockey has got a lot of Canadian in it. Still, if they do that tomorrow, I'm going to be.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to look at. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised either way.
No, I actually think they will, Neil, because the movement has gone global, and there's no question about that. And the other thing that was interesting about baseball, and I think also basketball, I more read about that than saw that part, was that there are two teams linked arms too. Like another
right in basketball, I think they did that.
And baseball, at least the ones I saw did that, right? And so, it was basically one long linked set, right? So, which is actually really good, even better.
Well, what's going to happen is like all the people who get mad at these players doing these protests, what are they going to watch? Because I guess you can't watch baseball any longer. You can't watch basketball any longer. If the NHL does it, guess you're not going to be watching the NHL. I don't know much about what's happening in MLS. NASCAR, we know what's happening there, so you can't watch that anymore. You guys are running out of stuff to watch, man.
Well, see, the one that's going to be the most interesting will be football, right? Only because that's where it started, right? So,
right.
And the thing that gets me, though, I have to say, with the commissioner basically said, I think people should be allowed to take a knee. Like he's trying to like gain control over it, right? So they don't really give a crap what he thinks at this point. I don't think.
No, I mean the horse is out of the barn on the kneeling thing. It's almost like. And I saw something that apparently Charles Barkley said. I was watching ESPN a little earlier, and something that Charles Barkley said. I'm glad he said it, and I'm glad that some of the folks over there picked up on it. He said, it's totally fine for folks to take a knee, and encourage them to take a knee if that's how they feel. That's great, but it shouldn't have a negative connotation for those who don't take a knee. And somebody said the best way of explaining it is there are a lot of blacks in the military, and they said, some of these folks said, hey, look, I have no problem with anybody taking a knee. I'm in the military. I have no problem with it. I know what it's about. But for me personally, I will not take a knee. I will choose a different way to show my, me standing with those folks, but it will be different because that's just my approach to it, being in the military. And I'm glad that that was pointed out because I think that, sometimes people kind of get a little overzealous. And if you're not taking a knee, then you're the enemy all of a sudden. And I
Right.
don't think it should be like that. I think, if you're comfortable with doing a knee, that's great. If you're not comfortable with doing a knee, that's all right too.
Look,
You got to do what's right for you.
I spent 22 years of my life in politics, and the one thing you learn is there's a million ways to do things, right? And there's no one way that's better than another way necessarily. And especially, look, I mean, think of it this way: if you're somebody who has this burning passion to do something for good, there's no one thing. Look, you could, if you want to be political about it, you could support an issue, you support a candidate, you could run for office, you can get into a demonstration and be in the demonstration, you could take a knee or sit during the national anthem, whatever you want to do. You can, there's a million ways to express how you feel about things, and also to take an action to support how you feel about things, which is even more the better term. And I just named the general categorical ways you could do it, and then you can drill down and pick one of 1,000 issues, or one of 2,500 candidates, or one of 150 gestures, or I mean, there's a million approaches to doing this, and every one of them carries some weight and validity. Meaning, you do it the way you're comfortable. At the same time, it can have an impact regardless of which one it is. And it may be that all you want to do is give money, and that's fine too, if that's what you want to do, right? All of them are valid, and nobody should say this, getting like, you didn't take a knee, therefore you're an enemy, is a joke. And actually, whoever says that's a damn idiot.
Yeah, it just doesn't need to go that far. It doesn't need to be that way. There's, people that, marched. There are people who sat. There's people who did all different things, but it's not the means, it's the ends that are important. And we all take different roads to the same place in certain regards. It doesn't matter. Maybe sometimes you just feel like, hey, I want to do it this way. I just feel a little more strongly about doing it this way. Me personally, I'm not trying to make anybody else do it the way I do it, but respect the way I do it. I mean, it's I get a little irritated when people expect you to do certain things, because it's important to them. Just let people do things in their way.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think differently than the next person, than the next person, than the next person about whatever. And I have one way I do things, and other people have other ways they do things, and you have ways you do things, and they're all potentially fine. I mean, sometimes, look, there are things that are, let's just say, not acceptable.
Right.
There are those, plenty of them.
Right.
We've seen that from our resident of 1600 Pennsylvania. I don't want to call him by his title because he doesn't belong there.
That is his title for me.
Yeah.
Current resident of 1600. I'm so glad I heard that last night, because sometimes, I mean, there's some people doing some really great things, and because they're doing really great things, and maybe they're very visibly great, that doesn't mean that everybody has to do it that way, because everybody doesn't think the same way. So just, let people figure out what they want to do and how they want to do it, as long as the thing is to bring much needed attention to injustice, or racism or sexism or whatever. That's the main thing to keep your eyes on. How do we bring attention to that? How we change it, as opposed to, you got to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, then you're really not. That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Or in the case of Kaepernick in the early days, if you do it that way, you're not, right? So, yeah. So is Charles Barkley admitting he finally is a role model?
Yeah, well, I don't think he's come to that conclusion after what 30 years after that commercial went out.
I will never forget that. I mean, he was, to his credit when he said that.
He was right
Yeah, he was. I mean,
to a certain extent. I know it may be because of some of the exact phrasing of it, caught a lot of people's attention, but he was right. He wasn't put there for certain things. He was there to play basketball and to try to be the best basketball player he can be.
And he was. I mean, he basically said, "Look, just because I'm an athlete doesn't make me like somebody
Right.
to look up to." Right? Which is right. He's right. I mean, it's the character of the man, not the character of the sport, for God's sake.
Could we think about this for a second with Charles Barkley? Because I was living in Wilmington when he was drafted by the Sixers, so I remember him in college as the round mound of rebound when he was playing with Auburn, and he was even bigger in college, But I would have never have guessed that in 2020 that we would still be talking about Charles Barkley and that he would have been relevant for every one of the years since he's been on the national scene, since he played basketball, since he retired. Charles Barkley is kind of an amazing American story when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, he's become kind of iconic in a lot of ways, not in the sense that people look up to him that way, meaning a role model, but more like he's a figure who actually who matters to people, right? They pay attention to him. They care to hear him. When he's doing something or he's on, they'll talk about it. And he's never left the public eye in that regard ever.
You know what is cool about it is because he's always remained true to himself. He never seems to try to be anything he's not. He says what's on his mind. I think he's gotten better with making sure what he says comes out the way he wants it to, because earlier on that was not the case sometimes.
No.
But he's always been a guy you just see as being straight, coming right from the heart. Whatever he thinks and believes, that's what he says. And people have responded to that in ways that I just never would have thought would have kept him where he is. And that's why I love that. To me, the best pregame of any sport, pre and post game, is Chuck, Kenny, Shaq, and Ernie. Nobody else is even close, to be honest with you. And it's because Shaq is that. I mean, Shaq is just great. I was just talking to our buddy Alan, who's throwing some nice comments out there about, because Shaq actually did. Remember were you at NetSuite that one year where Shaq was? They did a fireside chat. It was Evan and Shaq.
I watched it.
It was good. Shaq is great, but it was even better when Shaq did the same kind of setup with Girish from Freshworks. And what was great about that was Girish was so far out of his comfort zone. It was so obvious. Me and Alan were just talking about this, but Shaq put him to rest. I mean, Shaq was like, "Hey, look, it's gonna be okay, man. Don't worry." I mean, look, because Girish, you could see, was like he was trying to, ask a question and try to, and Shaq was like, it's gonna be all right, man. And it was just funny, and we all enjoyed it. And Shaq was just great. And Shaq and Chuck and Kenny and Ernie's like the ringmaster. He's the one that kind of holds all of these personalities together. It's just, I think I missed that more than I missed the games, quite honestly.
No,
seeing all that together.
I totally get it. Look, the thing with Shaq too, that always, like, I would watch obviously I love SNL and I always have, I've watched it since show 1, literally in the 70s. But the one person who The Imitation did a massive disservice to was Shaq. When Jay Farrow would do the Shaq imitation, they made Shaq sound like an idiot.
Like a big idiot. Yeah.
Right. And the guy is not only, he's the little opposite of that, right? He's an incredibly intelligent guy. He's just very low. He's very he's not low key, but he's relaxed, right?
He's relaxed, but he has a bit of a persona that plays into some of that a little bit.
Yeah, but He's not. This man is
not dumb, but just like a big happy-go-lucky kind of guy.
right,
Which
but
on the surface he is that, but there's so much underneath the surface.
that's the
Like
thing. Look at
the
look at
guy. Go ahead.
like a business genius, for God's sake.
Yeah, remember he was. Well, you didn't see that, but or maybe you saw it on the replay when he was talking about his early investing in companies like Google.
Yeah.
You know, but before most people knew anything about it, like he had a team of people that were he was working with on investing, and he's got a PhD in some kind of education. Remember during our off season, certain years he was working with the sheriff's office in Miami. I mean, or so
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is, everybody thinks of him as, big Shaq, basketball playing Shaq, but there's so much more to that guy, and so much more to Chuck, and so much more to Kenny, and some even Ernie. I mean, Ernie's backstory. Have you seen that little like mini doc on him and his wife adopted a special needs child from, I think it was somewhere in Eastern Europe, and I mean, it was a kid at the time. Now he's grown, but he can't take care of himself. He constantly needs care and help. And Ernie, all the stuff he does, he's announcing, he's flying, he's doing all this stuff, but he's also like taking care of this special needs son that he adopted, and seeing all the support this kid needs, and how Ernie deals with it on top of his own health issues that he's had over the years. It's like, man, you have a lot of respect for each one of those four. But what's great about it is the backstories are very important, but them together as a unit, they're just fun to watch.
Yeah, they are. They're amazing, actually. And the chemistry is obvious with the four of them too, which is the other side of it. It's like you can see they all genuinely like each other.
Yeah, and they all enjoy watching basketball too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say this for the baseball guys, you can see they love watching baseball too.
Look, there's a lot of really good baseball announcers who really like get into. I've always been a fan of, homies, right? The baseball announcers who root for their home team, right? And because back in the early days, the baseball announcer was supposed to be some sort of semi-neutral arbiter, just kind of reporting on what they see. But that's a joke. Who cares about that, right? I mean, I can watch what I see or hear what I hear, right? So, but now, of course, nobody stops that, and it's when they're like really rooting. It's amazing to listen to and watch because they're so happy and enthusiastic about all the things going on. And the other thing is because they are observant, and and even the worst of them is more observant than most fans. Is they're picking out nuances of the game that you wouldn't even have noticed necessarily, like a shift that's made, or they know some of the backstory of a particular action that a manager takes or a team takes, right? They get it, and I love that. I absolutely love that, and they're smart, man. They know the game. So well, that's the thing with baseball fans are baseball fans. They're not. It's like football fans. You'll find people who are casual football fans, because it's the game to watch, and they'll watch a game, but they're not like you, right? Particularly, right? Or even me with the Giants, right? They're not like that. They'll just watch a game. But baseball fans, you're pretty much a fan. If you're gonna.
Well, I will say this: college football fans,
different,
particularly down in this part of the world, the country, nah, they're just as passionate as anybody else.
That's college. That's your university.
Yeah. Or I mean, even down here, it's like down here, it's SEC versus the world. I mean, it's like, you're definitely into your own university, but it's, that SEC chant. I don't think I hear a chant like that for any other conference where you're playing, at different bowl games, and, where it's a SEC team versus somebody else. That SEC chant, you hear that everywhere you go. And there's something different about, I think football is universally, the passion. I always call baseball America's pastime, but football has become Americans' passion.
for now.
Well, it's been that way for a while, and I would say that I just feel like you're right. The baseball fans, they have a love affair with the sport. I would say football fans, they have just an affair.
Right.
They're really passionate,
Well,
into it
I
right
think, like,
now.
yeah, college football fans have a love of their. In your case, the SEC is look. I mean, I'm on the like. I think what is usually battles it out, I guess, with the Pac-10 to be number 2, right, in terms of.
I think the Big Ten would be ahead of Pac-10.
I do too, but
Yeah.
I'm prejudiced. So, uh, but we don't have what the SEC has in terms of that deep commitment to the conference. We have commitments to the teams in the conference. Like, I will not root for Ohio State very often.
I won't either, but that's for another reason.
Well, but I find myself weirdly watching SEC games and rooting for Alabama, which is a team I never in my life thought I would root for, right, ever. I mean, like, I hated them. I thought that's George Wallace's home, man, right? So, but I root for Alabama, right, when I'm watching games. And if I watch an SEC team, I tend to root for Alabama of all of the in the SEC for whatever reason. But I'll watch SEC games and you can tell the difference. I mean, the Big Ten, believe me, they got hardcore fans of the teams in the Big Ten, and we all recognize the power of the conference and how good the football can be. A lot of the powerhouses and what do you call it, the offensive lines and defenses, a lot of those huge guys show up in the Big Ten, right? Always have, right? Because the heritage was steel and coal and mines, right? And you look at one of the first professional football teams ever was the Canton Bulldogs, right, in Ohio, and that was made up pretty much coal miners, so that the Midwest tends to have those kind of husky big guys. That said, when it comes down to what conference do you want to go to, if you're given the choice of conferences, SEC would win hands down for anyone, really.
Well, it's like ACC for basketball. There's serious pride in that conference when it comes to college basketball. Beyond the individual teams, of course, they have those, the big rivalries, Duke and Carolina and NC State and some of the other ones, but they view themselves as a basketball conference. So they take pride in the overall, only second to their individual teams. SEC is like that specifically for football. If you have to pick with Big Ten, would that be the case for Big Ten? Do they see themselves more as a football conference more than anything else?
Basketball in the Big Ten is not. I mean, look, individual teams like Michigan State and other ones who typically, end up somewhere in the Final 4 or 8 in the March, in the tournament, are very proud of the basketball teams, and the conference overall likes basketball. No, but it's a football conference. It's not even questionable, and even there's some baseball in it too. Although the creme de la creme there is like Arizona State and that universe, and Big East is good now for baseball. Well,
in the 80s and 90s, the Big East ruled college basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great. I mean, I was a big Georgetown fan. Still haven't gone over that 1985 game versus Villanova. It's still painful.
Big East was, again, I was a Big East fan before when I was in high school, right? Because of, as I said, because of Calvin Murphy and people like that. It wasn't even in the Big East, but he would play Big East teams, right? So I told you about that game, I think in a prior episode we talked about, where I went to Philadelphia to watch Niagara play Villanova in a tournament, right? It was NIT, I think. And Calvin Murphy dunked over 6'7" Joe Allen, who was 6'7" tall and 6'7" wide, right? And, this guy was like a giant. And I watched Calvin Murphy do his thing and literally just go right over the top and dunk over him, over a 6'7" basketball player. What was Calvin Murphy? 5,
maybe 8,
5,
7, 8, somewhere around there.
5'8". He dunks over a guy a foot taller than him, and it was a dunk. It was
Yeah.
a shot over the guy when he was going up. It was a dunk.
Calvin Murray was a tough guy.
He was, look, my favorite college player and one of my favorite pro players, but my favorite college player of all time is Calvin Murphy, bar none. The only other one who I kind of loved for no apparent reason was University of Michigan's Cazzie Russell, man. I used to love watching him play too.
Yeah. Well, did he play with you guys for a while?
Yeah, he was Nick.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
He's kind of our sixth man. He was good too. He was actually a very good Nick. Good guy too. But I remember at University of Michigan, and I used to watch him play. Those were Calvin Murphy, though, hands down my favorite college player of all time, just because I just loved watching him so much.
Ironically, my favorite college basketball player of all time was another guy of short stature, but a little more recent than that. It was Allen Iverson.
Oh, of course.
I never saw. I mean, before that it was Ralph Sampson. So I went from 7'4" to like 5'11". You know, I cover all sizes spectrums. But yeah, I mean, there's something about seeing a little guy go at it. I mean, with no fear.
No,
I just love that.
I did too. And the thing is that Iverson, very similarly with the ball control, the level, just the way they handle things was literally physically handle the ball was absolutely like awe-inspiring. You'd watch them and go, how did they do that? And it's not like, why did they do some tricky, weird move, but you didn't question the move like, oh, that was just showboating.
No, that was,
you knew it had a reason, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you were in awe of the fact that they could do the move.
Yeah. Yeah, and the funny thing about Iverson was basketball was his second best sport.
What was his best?
He was an all-state quarterback.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he was like player of the year in basketball and football in the state of Virginia.
Jesus Christ.
So yeah, that guy was amazing. We really went off the rails on that one. We went where the conversation went. I got to show you something that happened while we were talking. Let me see because this just YouTube needs to rejigger their algorithms or something. Because look what they popped up for me. Let's see if I can show this. All right, here, check this out. Now, I hope you can see what's in the corner there. It's a little notification. What the hell? Why? What the hell? Why am I getting a notification about Bill Belichick going live? I know Bob Fable is out there. I probably should even share this, but I'm like, what the hell is this?
Now that's absolutely hysterical.
That makes no damn sense whatsoever. I need to speak to somebody at YouTube right away because your algorithms are completely, if I had to choose a letter, F.
Yes, that would be a good one. That's awesome.
That's terrible. Now they're trying to make up for it because now they just popped up a notification about the Rams, a Cooper Cup exclusive Rams. I knew it.
Oh, of course. You know that's coming up.
Jesus.
Because he cares about you.
Whatever, Bob. I shouldn't have even shared that. I'm being transparent. That's the reason I shared that.
You're so honest.
Me and Chuck. Yeah. All right, so let's end this on a prediction. Do you think Major League Baseball is going to finish their season?
The answer is that they will finish a season, not the season they intended to finish. And I think that, well, you've seen they've expanded the playoffs, which I think is also stupid. But I think it's going to be based on, I think what's going to happen is that a number of teams will not play 60 games. Consequently, two things are going to happen. One is a minimum standard has to be set for number of games played in order to qualify for something. And number two is the winners will be based on percentages, not on games played. Because, typically everyone normalized and leveled out and equalized it at 162 games. And even occasionally in 81, when there was a strike, the It's a good question, really. I mean, this is technically a season, though I don't see it that way, but I'll call it that because baseball's calling it that. But in 81, there was a strike. There was a number of teams who didn't play. There was a shortened season to begin with, and a number of teams didn't play the same amount of games. So the winner was based on percentages. And I think that's going to happen this year, too. Because the number of teams, they're not going to be able to make up the games. Look, they were already at a schedule where they had to play 60 games in 66 days. Okay. And there's no 67th day, to my knowledge. So ultimately, there will be teams who are just simply canceled rather than. I think the reason they're doing 7-inning doubleheaders is because they're going to have to schedule a lot more doubleheaders in order to make this up. And I'm sure they'll try. Ultimately, look, right now, they're just trying to protect protect advertising revenue. That's all.
That's it.
It's all this is about, getting some advertising revenue to salvage what is a lost year. And, but I think they'll finish a season. It won't be what they planned.
I think they're doomed. I think they thought about the money too much.
I agree there.
And protecting the money over protecting safety. And in another instance, because I heard that the players didn't want the bubble either.
Yeah.
And and so you got to put as much blame on the players as you are on the owners in that regard. Everybody wanted their money, and they kind of said, and they wanted to be able to do things they wanted to, and they didn't want the bubble. And now you're seeing, the impact of bad decision making all the way around.
Yeah.
I don't think they can finish if another big breakout happens, and more games get canceled. What's the point? Well, the season is going to have an asterisk around it, even if they do finish it.
For that purpose, I already think it has to, even with 60-game season period. But even if they finished it out with no further cases, I think they're going to finish out something. But if it's 40, I agree with you. If it's somehow that every team's playing, ultimately 40 games, then what's the point? But the point to them is what the point was, which is revenue. So
yeah,
they're just salvaging something now. So I think it's gotten to the point now, whatever they can salvage, they will.
So let me ask you this. So let's say they do fit in a season, whatever that season is. They finish something. They do a playoff, get the World Series. The Yankees are in the World Series. The Yankees win the World Series. Is it a full-fledged 28th World Series championship? Or
well, they're going to count it that way, but I don't think so. I mean, look, and I need to say, as a Yankees fan, if somebody asks me next year, if they win this year, how many World Series did they win? I'll say 28. But I mean, I am a Yankees fan, so whatever we got. What am I going to say? 27 and a third? So
yeah,
is it really? No, of course not. Ultimately, a World Series is dependent on a full season, as far as I'm concerned. Again, I'm traditional in a lot of things. There isn't a single league that I think of all sports that, for example, does their overtimes right way.
Yeah, that overtime thing is just ridiculous.
All of them, every league.
Yeah,
hockey, football, baseball, basketball. You know what? You play the game till it's won and lost. That's it.
You're doing the Herm Edwards.
I'm right there. Go
you
Herm.
play to win the game.
That's exactly right. And it takes 18 innings in baseball and 3 overtimes in hockey and 2 overtimes in football and 1 in basketball or 2 in basketball. Then it does. That's it. That's part of what you sign up for when you're making $44 million a damn year, right?
Absolutely. I'm totally with you. Now, for college football, and by the way, Bob, you might want to add an L in there for college.
Yeah, right.
Just want to let you know.
Bostonian spelling of college. Boston College, Colege.
There it is. To me, this is really the interesting thing, because down in my neck of the woods, no SEC football, people are going to lose their minds if it comes to that. Do you think college football is they're going to have a season in college football?
I think they're certainly at this stage thinking there's going to be something of a season. Again, I don't know if you've seen, but there are already things like players talking about opting out, and other teams literally talking about not participating. I mean, there's already that discussion going on, and there's only not even 2 months. Well, no, like a month, maybe 40 days till all
Yeah.
that's supposed to start, right? So it's really coming up on crunch time is deciding what's going to happen. But, I imagine it's going to be left to the conferences to decide. But
Then there's already some apparently like the SEC kind of, they came down and said, "Hey, we're looking at doing conference only 10-game season
I think the
schedule."
Big Ten's the same way.
But the ACC had done something like uh, all conference plus one, and the plus one were really meant for playing because there are a lot of rivalry games between ACC and SEC teams like Georgia Tech, Clemson, South Carolina. A lot of those. So ACC had tried to account for those rivalry games. SEC is like, we're only going to do conference games. So
Yeah.
there's some some things going on, that one conference is impacting the other conference's stuff, and it's going to be. I want to see it, but I want to see it as long as it's safe, as long as there's a good plan.
Right.
Are you going to be able to do a bubble for college people? I don't.
I don't know.
It's a tough one.
That one's really hard to tell. What is that?
NCAA group, FCS. Yeah. It's all about the big Power Five conferences. Let's be brutally honest. Now, this is going to sound, nobody cares about the others. I'm sorry. On a national level, we just care about the Power Five. It sounds bad.
No.
That's well, let's put it like that's where all the money is made.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to follow the money. I have a feeling that they're going to try to fit in a season some way.
I agree with you. It's going to be really odd because I think it's going to vary from conference to conference. But here's the thing: if the SEC and the Big Ten are saying only conference games, and and another conference says plus one, well, there's no place to go get plus one. So, right? I mean, if the other conferences refuse to play you, how are you going to get somebody from outside the conference unless you go down to what is it called, the NAIA, right? Or Division 11, right? So, you're not going to be able to do that whether you want to do it or not. I mean, ultimately, if the Power Five say, yeah, we're going to have a season, conference only, then all the league, everything related will be conference only. It's just that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, there it is. The big conferences, the Power Five, they run things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate in a lot of ways, but it's just and even on top of that, I'm going to say SEC and Big Ten, whatever those two conferences, I think they are the leaders.
Yep.
Even of the Power Five.
I agree.
And I kind of think when it comes to football, there's SEC, there's Big Ten, and then there's the other three. Outside of Clemson is starting to make the ACC move up a little bit, but it's only one team. There was a time when they put together when Miami and Florida State and Virginia Tech came into the ACC, there was a time where the ACC was as good as any conference, but that was very early on. And then, of course, Miami just fell off the map.
Right.
Florida State is now falling off the map. Virginia Tech, they pretty much are just an also ran too. So all those teams that were supposed to make the ACC an elite conference from a football perspective, they're gone.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about SEC and Big Ten, and everybody else kind of has to, kind of fall in line.
So I guess the fundamental question then is, of the teams in those conferences, what are they going to opt to do? Because ultimately they're still going to make a decision on themselves, right? And nobody could really stop that either. So, if for example, Northwestern says, well, we're going to protect our guys, so we're not going to play. And the Big Ten becomes the actually Big 11 because it's now the Big 10. It's really
Well, that's the interesting thing about the bigger conferences. They're top heavy, and then there's some folks that are like, I hate to say it like this, but bottom feeders. And I'm not saying Northwestern is a bottom feeder, but they're not Ohio State,
No.
Michigan, Penn State. I guess you could put Wisconsin in there, although
depends.
Yeah, it kind of depends.
Yeah,
So
Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan and Wisconsin on occasion, Penn State.
Penn State. Those 5 dictate what happens in the conference.
Yeah, well, yes and no, because I will tell you one thing. We're the only private school in the conference, and which has always been a disadvantage, not an advantage. But and we won the conference. We won the West, 2 years ago. Didn't do very well last year, but we won the West 2 years ago. And the Northwestern has taken a fairly independent course, meaning it does what it does, regardless of what Ohio State and the others want and everyone else to do. That's happened before. There's been the Northwestern players, if you remember, were the ones who actually were trying to unionize, right? And that's pretty much the way Pat Fitzgerald kind of raises the team for that kind of, and has gotten the school to agree to allow, right? So the school acquiesces to Pat Fitzgerald's kind of approach, and so I wouldn't rule out. And I don't know this for any, I have no inside information here, but I wouldn't rule out Northwestern just saying, you know what, it's too dangerous for our kids. We're just not playing, not this year.
And I could see if they did that, that might do in the plans that the Big Ten has. If a team decides not to play.
Yeah, I don't, again, I'm sure just like everyone else, they love football. So, and plus their revenue, it produces an enormous amount of revenue, but the university is so damn well endowed already. The university has like $2 billion in their endowment fund, right? The only one, I think, is one of the top, 5 or 10 universities in the country for money. So they're not hurting. So,
because here's the difference between now. I think there, like you said, there's a possibility for, even if it doesn't happen, I could see Northwestern doing something like that. Taking like a principled stance, let's say. I don't see any team in the SEC making that principled stance, because down here football rules, and not saying that it doesn't rule the Big Ten, but I think a team like, I don't see an equivalent of Northwestern in the SEC. Let's put it like that.
What conference is Duke in?
They're ACC.
And then Rice is in what?
Big 12?
I don't know. They're Texas.
Or they might not even be in Big 12. I don't know.
But those are the 2 universities that are the equivalent of Northwestern in terms of student athlete. Stanford, Northwestern, to kind of stand out that way. And then Rice and Duke tend to have a lot of, student athlete is kind of the focus, not just athlete. I'm going to say that, I mean, like, emphatically on academics matter a great deal. Like, usually Northwestern and Stanford fight for basically the highest overall achievement level for student athletes every year. They're the only one to. Stanford probably wins 6 out of 10 of those. And then Northwestern will take the other 4, so to speak. So
Bob does bring up an interesting point, though.
Yeah,
because Notre Dame plays for the most part like an ACC schedule, but they could actually do in the ACC.
Yeah,
if they say something. I don't see Notre Dame taking a principled stance, because they're football crazy as any school is, as much as any school is. I don't see that happen. But if they did, they could have an impact, because they play an ACC schedule, but do they still play a lot of Big Ten teams? Like, they used to play Michigan State and Michigan.
They probably play 1 to 2 a year, I would say.
It used to be more than that, but now they're with the ACC.
That used to be the rivalry. Because where Notre Dame is, the Midwestern team clash, right? So
right,
Penn and Notre Dame were joined at the hip. Now, when Newt Rockne was there, it was like playing Michigan, right? They're playing Michigan, right? So, but yeah, I think right now it's more like one or two Big Ten teams in a given year.
If I had the bet, I think there's going to, unless there's some really even more terrible breakout, I'm thinking they're going to try to fit in a college football season.
I agree with you totally.
Too much money on the line, and too many people want to do it. Too many. I mean, down here, they don't care. It's just about football down here.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. I think that the Power Five minimally will all be making an attempt. So, I mean, to me, it's almost look. There's 40 days left, roughly, probably a little less, really, till the decision has to be made long before that. It's probably made now, but the time is coming really soon where they're going to have to at least announce the plan.
If they do it, and we should probably wrap it up after this. If they do it, I hope they look at what's going on in all these other leagues and learn very much so from the good and the bad. Learn from what's going on in Major League Baseball, because to me, professional athletes getting coronavirus is bad enough, but student athletes, that's just even worse.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
All right, man. we went all around the barn and back again on that one.
That was good though. Covered every sport.
Yeah, we did, and now I have enough time to go and check out the Bill Belichick show, I guess. Yeah.
And see if he can. He's live, so that would be great.
Yeah, I'll ask him a question.
Yeah, do that for me.
You know who Bob Fagel is? No. All right. Well, hey, that was fun. I always enjoy doing sports talk. Sometimes we have guests, sometimes we don't, but I just love talking sports.
Me, I'm so with you, man. I'm working. You know who I'm going to try to work on a gentleman that we met. Some of these folks know next week. I'm not going to say who yet until we have him. Somebody well, and see if we can get him on to get a perspective on the NBA and other things from a different angle than we normally do.
I just got to pop this up. Yeah, Bob. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy the Bill Belichick show.
Yeah, best thing ever.
Anyway, and I'm going to be working on having Eric Dickerson join us.
Yeah. Okay.
Eventually, that's going to happen.
I'm waiting for it, man.
Well, in the meantime, and there's going to be a lot of meantime for that one. I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Playaz. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking sports. We'll be doing happy hours. And we'll also be doing regular. Oh, we'll also be doing the crossover next week, too.
That's right. We have the Disrupt TV crossover next week. Yeah.
You cannot miss that. It's going to be so much fun. And we're going to make Nicole choose who she really likes more. She better get ready for that because I'm asking. Anyway, have a great weekend and we will see you next week.